In this lesson, we'll discuss placing structural walls. So we can place two different types of walls, basically a wall that's non-load bearing, an architectural wall for example, and one that is load bearing, basically a structural wall. So to create our structural walls, let's go to the Structure tab on the ribbon, click the Wall drop-down, and choose Wall Structural. When you select that, the ribbon will change and you have a variety of draw tools on the right allowing you to either pick lines or draw lines to define your walls. We'll basically use the draw line technique. So the first icon is selected. Now, for the type of wall you're going to create, look at the property area on the left. These are the walls that are currently loaded inside of Revit. So I could choose one of these different types of walls, depending on what I'm drawing, to create that element. Now, some of the walls technically would be drawn from the bottom level to the top level, but others can be drawn from that level that you're currently on down. For example, a foundation wall could go from level 1 down an unconnected height or to the top of a footing. For this example, let's just choose generic 8-inch wall. It's a basic wall. Now, you have options on the option bar across the top of how you would like this wall oriented when drawn. The first is, do you want it down from the current level? We're on level 1. Or do you want to draw it up? So you have depth or height. You also have to the right of that the level you want to go to, or do you want it to remain unconnected? Now for this example here, we're going to draw from level 1 up. So I'm going to change depth to height. And when you do that, Revit will notify you that you're making a modification in the orientation of the wall. Go ahead and cancel or close that warning box. Now that we've changed this to height, let's set our level that we want this wall to be drawn to. So I'm going to click Unconnected and I'm going to set it to level 2. Now one thing you'd want to do is make sure all of your levels are already set up before adding my walls. This wall will now be constrained from level 1 to level 2, so if level 2 moves, the wall will elongate or shorten depending upon that distance. Now the location line is how the wall behaves or is drawn based on the points you pick. So right now it says wall center line. So when I pick my points, the wall is centered on those points to the right and the left, no matter what is in the wall or how wide the wall is. Core center line would be a wall that contains multiple components, such as a CMU block, or brick, or wood furring strips, or drywall. Well, in any type of those more complex walls, there's actually a core element, like a block or a CMU unit. When it says core center line, that means the main part of that wall, in this case the block, would be the center line. However, for this wall we're using here, we don't have any elements, it's just a basic wall. So I'm going to leave it at wall center line. Now you have other options too. Finish face interior and exterior means the actual finished face of that wall, no matter what is in the wall. Core face interior and exterior is that core element. For example, that block. You're measuring off of that interior exterior face. Let's just click wall center line for this example. Now if chain is selected, that means as you pick, all the walls are chained together and cleaned up in any corners that you make. If you set an offset, you can offset the wall to one side or the other from the point you pick. And if I want to set a radius to make a curved wall, I could turn the radius option on. Now I'm going to use the draw command single line to create walls. And I'm going to create the walls around the exterior grid line of my grid layout. I'm going to start here in the lower left. And I'm just going to pick at this grid intersection. After you pick, you can zoom in and start to drag your mouse, and you can see because this wall is centered on the wall center line, it's nicely drawn to the right and to the left of the grid. Now that may or may not be what you want. Now I'm just going to continue to click points around the perimeter of the outermost grid on the bottom, the right, the top, and the left. Now this is more of a long process doing it this way. You could use the rectangle tool to do the exact same thing if this shape was a square or rectangle. And then when you click the beginning point again, it cleans up the wall nicely, and I'm still in the wall command. Now to illustrate how some of these other wall settings for location line work, I'm going to mouse over to the right side of this plan. Change wall location line to finish face exterior. Click the right end point of one of your grids. Start to drag the mouse left. You see the wall is positioned on that side, but if you drag the mouse the other direction, the wall is positioned opposite. So if you want the finish faces as your alignment line for justification, depending on the direction you drag, that wall will either be inside out or correctly drawn. Hit the escape key to exit that command. Now, another method again to draw walls, I could use pick lines if I had sketch lines or if I wanted to convert one of my other lines into a wall. You could also use the rectangle tool, which I had mentioned. Using the rectangle tool and then selecting basically a shape to create a rectangle will create the walls in that rectangular shape. Click Modify when done. So in this lesson, we talked about placing structural walls. We started the structural wall command from the Structure tab, and then we looked at an overview of all the properties of the structural walls we can select. When you're drawing a structural wall, you can draw it with height from the floor you're currently on up, or with depth from the floor down. You can set the extent to be another floor or unconnected. You can also set the justification for the wall, meaning is it justified on its center line for the points you pick, to one face that is finished on the exterior or interior, or to a core element of a wall, such as a main block part of a wall. Then we actually drew the walls by drawing lines, but you also can draw walls by selecting lines or drawing different shapes, such as a rectangle or an arc.